Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Hopefully, my voice is loud and clear. I wanted to, in this episode, speak about two ideas and their correlation, their relationship, and to really dive into the abstraction of morality. Okay. So, language and existence, when language and existence changed each other's meaning. Or let me see how I wrote it. When language and existence change each other's meaning, yeah. And the abstraction of morality. You see, morality is a very important idea, and when a human being, just to say this before I begin the episodes, when a person tries to understand something, they have to quickly figure out the context of the communication and then begin allowing the concept to have meaning in that context. When human beings wonder about the right and wrong of an action or of anything, like throughout history so far, the concept of morality has preserved our species. It has in some sense been a filter on the behavior of human beings as they are pulled towards the future's void. I would say that it is abstract, that when you look at something being right or wrong, it has nothing to do with a sort of physical, sensory existence. Do you know? The morality is just the acceptance of the hierarchy in the background, in the context. So what that means is, like people back in the day, they wore top hats, you know. And when you were in the industrial, England back in the day, if you didn't wear a hat, like it's as if you weren't distinguished between the animals, so you had to wear a hat. But then the future moved on in such a way where nowadays in 2021, if somebody wears a top hat in the street, it's strange to us. So what was right in one moment in history ended up becoming wrong in another moment, and who knows, in the future maybe aliens come down to Earth, and they're wearing top hats, and top hats become popular, Can you imagine, the extraterrestrials being these orbs of light with top hats, I'm gonna keep the music for myself a little, and then in the middle of the talk maybe release it. So the concept of right and wrong, and the concept of fixed meanings in existence, these are very shaky, and it's as if what has taken place on this planet, as I often through my own view of the universe, I summarize, is that creatures have emerged on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Upon the recognition of their individualism, they have began making sound, and they were so attentive to the sound. We were so aware that we were generating noise, and we were aware of generating the noise, that we have managed currently in 2021 to overlay the objective reality with various subjective angles, you know. We may look at the concept of belief and disbelief now and be like, no big deal, you know, but back in the day when a person believed something, it had a sort of ontological anchor for them. That means their whole reality was anchored through that lens of meaning, you know. And so what it's like nowadays, I would say, or what it should be like, we're a bit behind, but the advanced don't consider it because they don't need to. Because in some sense, how would I say it, nowadays we have an ability to to extract various types of meaning from a singular phenomena. That means back in the day, there was just a cup, and people looked at that object and were like, cup, cup, cup. You know, they saw the object and the subject interlinked, but they did not see the flexibility of once an object becomes a subject, it is tangible. It is, not tangible. It is transformable in your inner realms. You can transform any subject, but if you notice, you cannot transform an object. That's the fascinating thing about life. You know, I can stare at my coffee cup for hours, you know, in the hope that it's going to levitate, to a point where I can drink it, but I see that in some sense the hand has to move. So, but if I visualize a coffee cup hovering in the air and me drinking from it, that is instantaneously possible. You know, we don't realize, we take our imagination for granted, but our imagination is the invisible possibility of the world in its visible actuality, you know. So I'm saying pretty much that our morality is abstract. A lot of things we find in existence, which are sensory based, they are abstract too. You know, this is why law is required. If there was no if sensory perception was all that we needed, you know, there would be no need for minds. Because when you look at existence, it's a designed expression, part of a system of nature. You know, the only reason we are even wondering or asking the question of what is nature is because we have separated from it in the first place. So our sense of right and wrong is the it's like the aftermath of it's the aftermath of a fundamental separation between the object and subject, and what I would say the observer and the observed. This is an ancient relationship. Everybody pretty much needs to know this. Whatever situation you find in your life, find yourself in, even if it's in a dream state, there is always the observer and the observed. And once a person finds contentment with this, they can actually look at the world in a very peaceful manner. Because the moment you identify with the observed, you suffer. That was pretty much the whole attempt of Zen and Buddhism and all the wisdom traditions, where they're like, yo, you're watching as consciousness. I shouldn't even say consciousness. You're watching as awareness, conscious through a certain form, the experience of a changing world. So when it comes to when it comes to the observer, we as human beings have no choice. We contain it as a subject. And when it comes to the observed, we trap it into nouns. And if we notice, if a subject didn't move, it would be an object. It would be an internal object if it didn't move at all. That means a perfect example of a perfect internal object is, for example, the letter A or any other letter or the color blue. They have a sort of being, but their being their being, the being of, for example, the color blue, the ontological value, and people should know how to discriminate between ontology and epistemology. Ontology is more concerned about what is actually going on here, all the ultimate truth in some sense of the moment, and I would say epistemology is, how do we know what we know? So our ontology is kind of like looking at the world and being like, okay, what is there? What's there actually? And you can say epistemology is how we are accessing what is actually there, And this has to do with our inner realms and our outer realms. And for our inner realms, there is an inner self. We call that the ego. For the outer realms, there is an outer self. We call that the body. So in some sense, the idea of you as a person is the equivalent, or I would say it is the simultaneous subjective being. That means we are being in two dimensions at once, but because we can only see through the sensory perception the outer realms, the physical, we are ignorant of the non-physical. And, as a species, we have forgotten our relationship with the unknown as a known phenomenon. Language and existence, they change each other's meaning in the sense that language comes from existence. What I mean by this is that the world had to exist. There had to be forms. These forms had to change. In their change, there came the emergence of individualism, the emergence of a biological body. This biological body became aware of itself, and so the physical realm didn't go anywhere, but the non-physical realm was activated. The mind is like, you paid for a membership and got bonus content. You in some sense entered the world seeing more than just a surviving animal, lost to its instincts. It's like a person can make, for example, a wolf their best friend, like Jon Snow. He was like his white wolf was like his friend, right? Defending him in battle. But if he was trapped in a room with that white wolf, eventually the wolf's instincts would take over and the wolf would eat Jon Snow, or I don't know, maybe Jon Snow would eat the wolf. But the idea is that the creature would succumb to its instincts and would miss out on the opportunity of the inner space of the mind. And so we have developed that. Now, when I say language is the other side of the coin of existence. It is where the meaning of things lie. When I look at, again, I was saying the example of the color blue. The color blue has no meaning, but to us, when somebody says blue, that's a blue shirt, that's a blue bird, that's a blue cap. Do you know what I mean? When we see that blue, it has meaning in the subjective domain. Right? So this is very crucial, that every human being looks at their life and wonders about what is true in the outer realms and what is true in the inner realms. This way, they will not be entrapped by the abstraction of metaphysics, because metaphysics is like a power, it's like a force. We're wondering about the forces of nature, and we're wondering about the core generator of nature. Do you know that intelligence that seems, for now at least so far I've perceived it, it moves beyond mechanism. You know, it is in some sense like the artist is in some sense not its past. You know, like the person is not their past. They're getting information from the present, and even they can, in their inner realms, fathom the future. So the person's decisions are not just based on the past, but when it comes to human knowledge on this planet, we are trying to figure out everything in accordance to the past, not realizing time was our own way of cutting up a cake that can't actually be cut, because the interdependence of all things are necessary. So what I'm trying to say is that your ego is existing in language, and I call this the linguistic simulation. And language right now, we're moving slowly, and slowly the species has gone, through the great work. You're getting to a point where now minds can move. Before it was just bodies, there was no mind. So how language affects existence and how existence changes language is that existence's change was the emergence of language. But now, as I am speaking to you, what we're finding, it's just that this is a quality of communication. That when a person communicates, they are, if I can say this word, put a word here, re-narrativizing the moment. And it also, everything I'm saying also has to do with how much we trust our senses. René Descartes had two ideas he shared, two important imagery in his work. One was the imagery of a stick in the water. If you put a stick in the water, and people should know something about René Descartes, if you're a new listener, René Descartes, he was pretty much this human being, this philosopher, who his strategy in trying to figure out what is actually true was to doubt everything. In his effort to doubt everything, he came to this realization that you cannot doubt the doubter, and then he says, I think, therefore I am. Do you know? And we go into René Descartes' mind-body dualism, which is one of the most fascinating subjective works on this planet. I will tell you, any human being who doesn't know what René Descartes' mind-body dualism is, you don't know about how deep the human intelligence is. It's like we don't see the roots of the tree, and we're just believing the fruit on the branch, but all the branches are testifying at the same time, shouting that they are here. The trunk is here in a singular fashion, and the roots have their own hidden sermons. So, where this is leading is to the recognition that our communication changes. Like, the more you live as a mind, the more you're subjectively changing the world. The more you live as a body, obviously you're changing it objectively. The poet Rumi, he says this very epic quote. He says, when I was younger, I wanted to change the world. And then he says, but now that I'm older, I change myself. Why does he say that? Because that's when our bodies become dismissed slowly out of this realm, what we tend to recognize is that we are a mind. And the most important thing about a mind is its presence. And this is where Leonardo da Vinci says simplicity is the most ultimate sophistication. It is the simplicity in being where truth reveals itself. So if I say somebody is a good person, I have changed their existence to the subjective realm. If I say somebody is a bad person, I have changed their existence in the subjective realm. If somebody, let's say person A and B are talking, and person B comes to person A and says, how dare you think you're the first letter of the alphabet? You think I care, It's like, in my universe, the alphabet starts from B. And so person B throws, in some sense, throws out a language blast, kind of like, You know, that Japanese anime Dragon Ball Z where they would throw these power energy balls from their hand, like they would just throw energy at each other pretty much. So similarly, language is like we're blasting something into the moment. You know, we're blasting the music of our inner realms when we speak, the rhythms that our eyes witness. So, language and existence both are hands that are puppeteering not just the ego but the experience of self. I say this metaphor. We have two different eyes, but we see the same view. We see one view. And so our mind has two, it's like the mind is existing in two dimensions, the body is existing in one. Right, so language is the additional dimension, and it is where we have free will in physical existence. That means imagine physical reality was a language, was a physical object-based language, and non-physical reality was subject-based language, okay? And now imagine you were this mighty being, and you had the option, you were bilingual. You know, you could speak both, you know? I'm personally, you know, my parents immigrated to Canada, so by the nature of being bilingual, I speak, when I think also about every word, I hear it in two simultaneous universes sometimes. You know, Rene Descartes shared this idea of a stick in the water, and the stick in the water, it bends. So when you look at the reflection of the water, it bends. And so Rene Descartes was saying we can't just trust our sensory perception. That means what we see, the bent stick, is not the actuality of the stick. And what that means is there are, like, truth is in some senses being filtered by first how our eyes have opened to the world, and then in regards to what truth actually is on its own. This is why I gave a lecture called Divinity of the Human Mystery. There is way more unknown variables in this universal sector than known variables. The species has come far, but it has not come far enough, and now in the inner realms we are way more advanced. That means everybody knows there should be world peace, but why aren't people peaceful? Everybody knows that there is enough resources on this planet to develop a global strategy where needs are met and efficiency visions are amplified. But how come we are not in that world? How come we are in our minds walking in heaven, in future heavens, but in reality it's like the same world is coming and going, and it's like, when will the effort come? That means I don't know how many people ask the question, honestly I'm saying this, how many people ask the question, why am I in this species? Not why do I exist, why am I here only, not just from an individual inner realm perspective, because the inner realm's meaning is left to the content of your attention. Whatever you look at, you are instantly teleporting into your inner realm. It's like the brain has no clue what is going on actually in reality. All that the brain knows is in some sense to simulate a world over the world. That means the brain is just transferring an echo. Now this echo goes into a state in the inner realms where it's being watched by what I would tell you, what I would explain it as an attributeless seer. In Vedanta they would say the seer of the seen is unseen. And by the way guys, many people may wonder why I brush up on the same topics in many of the lectures. One thing is that I'm trying to give these talks in a way where every lecture can stand on its own. The second idea from René Descartes that I probably should share was that René Descartes was like, yo, what do we do with dreams? In our current society, everybody is told to dream big, dream big, dream big. But René Descartes actually thought about what do you do with a dream? And the thing is that we awaken from a dream. When we awaken from a dream, whatever sensory acceptance of reality we had was false. So as long as we have the possibility to dream, there is a small percentage that all of manifestation, for example, from a secular standpoint, is a neurochemical dream. So because we awaken from dreams pretty much, the certainty of our senses are unreliable, is unreliable. When a human being takes this approach throughout the day, that because everything is dualistic, if we entertain the dualistic self, it would mean for the first time in civilization, people are having, in some sense, a trio of perception. That means every person's psychology can be seen in three ways. One, how they are being a self, how they are being a self to others, and how the world is, right? So in some sense, the triangle of self, other, and world. When you look at this deeply, you see that people exist in a version to themselves. They exist in a different version when they are with others, every person. That means that every unique conversation that has happened on this planet has been its own room. Even people listening to me talk now, it's the same. You know, you have entered the room of one human being's mind, for example. So, and then a way where we exist to the world that neither we know and neither others know. This is true mysticism, folks. You know, people think mysticism is just, all right, you sat by a tree for a little while. No, no, no. True spiritualism, I would say, is an experiential relationship with all that is as the whole moment. And if you can find the attributeless seer, you, in some sense, are liberated. That's what liberated means. Liberated means the person doesn't need, can't, whatever intelligence they are, it has evolved beyond the notion of entrapment, has evolved beyond the notion of wanting to just be a creature of condition, a creature of circumstance. So we are existing in multiple rooms at the same time, ultimately. A level of multidimensional management is required. We should have this attitude in modern society that we are, how would I say it? We, just like how we walk inside like shopping malls and we exit those shopping malls, it's a building, it's a space. And so we have to become conscious of subjective space, that all communication is based on the significance of meaning in the room. I'll give you an example that the philosopher Alan Watts shared. And this idea was very ancient in philosophy, and it had a geometrical sort of connection in the sense where Alan Watts was saying if two spheres spin around each other in a vacuum, in utter emptiness, which sphere is spinning around which? And so imagine, instead of two spheres spinning in a vacuum, when two people speak, two inner realms are spinning in a vacuum of one singular outer realm. And we haven't even gotten as a species to the point where I would say we are free from identity. Right now, people are just confused, wanting to identify with endless things. It's hilarious. It's as if like it's just one pillar of attention, one beam of attention, you know, and it's like wherever this attention goes, the world is, all those subjects are activated to be used. I am telling you, this is why I understood this really when I watched the movie Godfather, and one of my cousins just went on a marathon and showed me all three. And when I watched the Godfather movies, all three of them, after, like I was a young kid, maybe I was 15 or something, and I remember after watching that Godfather movie, everywhere for like a day or two, everywhere I went, I just looked at people and I was like, show me respect, you know, like that sort of mentality, right? So what does that imply? That implies that the communication in the environment had a subjective reformatting of the livelihood of a psychology that is endlessly going from moment to moment to moment to the next moment. So this is the challenge of the abstraction of morality. I should probably change the subtitle of that. The challenge of the abstraction of mortality. Not mortality, morality. So our sense of right and wrong, is it from our inner realms? Is it from our outer realms? You know, you can say, Albert Einstein even said it. He had this epic quote where he said, if you judge a fish, if you judge a fish by its ability to fly, that fish would go on its whole life thinking it's stupid. And what that means is, not only are we just like 8 billion creatures that are moving around on the surface of the earth, many of us are mislocated in regards to the significance of our ability. That means not only there is just people are competing for jobs, it is actually the reality of the type of work that people do. You can say many people have jobs now in the world, but what is the quality of the work they do? It's not that high quality, or a civilization would be way more advanced, right? We haven't gotten to the point where 8 billion human beings realize selfless service is the next chapter of human advancement. So our sense of what is right, what is wrong, it is being powered by a story and by a changing atomic elemental realm. If we ultimately realize there is the point of, what do you call it, the object, we got to find a solution for an object, and then we got to find a solution for a subject. That means we're not here just survival of the fittest animal. If people only cared for their animal, they would not live for a future, right? Because an animal has nothing to do. We are not behaving like an animal on this planet, and this is why we're so advanced, which the only explanation of other species would be that they are asleep. We woke up early. I'm gonna just throw it out there, into the realms of, in the libraries of philosophy in the future, just as a reference. Or maybe I should word what I'm trying to say differently. The infinite era begins. The era where we realize we're more than an object, more than a subject, and then we notice we are our whole moment witnessing, aware to what the content inside it, so that you actually don't have a mind. You find yourself inside your awareness, which its source we call the mind. Like, if anybody's really seriously listening to what I'm saying, if people have experienced this, please share in the comments, in the chat section. If you have noticed that everything you're doing is happening in the spotlight of your attention. Existence is attention. And if the attention is on language, existence becomes the language. If the attention is on nature, truth becomes nature. If the attention is on machines, truth becomes a machine. So it is ultimately like the ontological revelation, I would say. The ultimate ontological revelation is that truth is where its attention is. That means for me, I was like, God created when I was looking from a theological angle, through a theological lens, at like the meaning of life, I was like, why did God in the Abrahamic traditions create man, and then why did he put himself in it? Like, that is the profound mystery of the religious text, I would say. That if we were designed to be separate from the Creator, why is there a soul which is the, fingers of the Creator within us? What I mean by that is that we are being moved like a puppet, but it is not just based on the inner and the outer, it is also a watching force, There's something in metaphysics, in the branch of mental states, where they call it propositional propositional attitudes. What that means is, in reality, there is a proposition, something is claimed, something happens, and then we respond to it, and our attitude to it suggests the type of knowledge we extract, suggests the type of meaning we extract, and check out the type of quality of a moment this creates for the being. A perfect example would be the master swordsman and like the novice soldier who's just angry and loud and is just running into the void like a savage, right? The master swordsman in the inner realms is walking in a garden. He is peaceful, but the savage soldier's like, I'm gonna take over and conquer and just being brute animal. Like brute force works in some situations, but it is devoid of emotional understanding. And that is the biggest loss. That is the biggest defeat, where you are living in a world where there's the complexity of emotions, there's the complexity of observation through subjective narratives, through subjects, and yet we are ignorant and we choose to manifest as violence. I mean, I'm telling you, it's not that there are no angels and demons in this realm. It's just that we animate meaning. And it's like a sort of circle of life where stuff happens in your outer realms, your inner realms change. Your inner realms change, the meaning of the outer realms change. Then something else happens in the outer realms, your inner realms change again. Then the moment your inner realms change, your view on the outer realms change. So actually, it's as if the universe has been being enlightened for eons, It's like, how long have you been enlightened? Oh yeah, 4.5 billion years, whenever the creature emerged into reality. So modern morality has to find a way to calibrate and be able to align the significance of what is happening behind people's eyes with the significance of what is happening in front of their eyes. The only way this solution can arise is if there is a cultural shift, which means human beings stop reacting to the moment as a singular idea, rather as a witness of the multidimensional. As a multidimensional witness, dare I say. Imagine a civilization where, imagine somebody had a traumatic experience, or somebody went through something intense, and they, in some sense, after that intensity, the person was just, nothing happened, everything worked out fine, but the person was internally shook, right? And so in an advanced civilization, there will be social workers known as advanced communicators, and they will in some sense go to individuals and ask them about how they are managing their inner realms. And when I say inner realms, I don't mean as a sort of something that you can share, because the mind changes all the time. I'm saying in the sense that we start caring for 8 billion inner lives. Somehow that has to be approached by civilization, I feel in 20 years, the species is gonna completely wake up to this realization that we are breathing in simulations of language which we are projecting. And if these simulations of language, if you as a being, whoever you are on this planet, if for one moment in this life you could just be still like a pond and watch the waves of your mind settle, I am telling you, there is more than enlightenment here. There is enlightenment in motion. Because people think it's a static revelation. They think, oh man, he got enlightened. People think freedom from reincarnation means that you reached a certain level where you don't need to reincarnate anymore. That's the wrong attitude. I would say freedom from reincarnation is when you realize what was trapped was never you. That the watcher has journeyed eons. What makes you think this form is a big deal? The mind has a multidimensional complexity that sometimes I think when a person passes away in this life, behind their eyes, the mind, it's an apocalypse. That means the whole biological system and the subjective realms, and this is, of course, you can say it's theoretical at this point that I'm sharing, but I feel that there's a huge potential that it would be called the last rage of the subject, where whatever idea you're in this world, you're roaring it like a lion, meaning that you are choosing to be the presence of your whole moment, and the presence of your whole moment, even infinity is like what's beyond that. Society is a system. Everything that works in accordance to our expectation seems to be systemized. Now, artists are very different, because when I look at all those human beings who for no reason decided to generate something, and when I say generate, not in a sort of ideological game. Now, I would say people are still trying to feel special on this planet. They haven't realized we're all on the same boat, going to the same destination, and all judgments are shenanigans when it comes to existential activity. That means our cultures have ignored change to appear singular to themselves. The nature of the multidimensional, I would say, the era of advanced communication, the era of the mind. We can even create one word for it, mind era. This intelligence has to be activated, and it can be activated. That's the whole point of me sharing this podcast. Because if everybody was perfect from the beginning, there would be nothing to talk about. If everything was imperfect from the beginning, then there would be nothing to talk about, no perfection to talk about, because the world would have been an absolute. But reality is not absolute. It changes, and that change is interpreted through the shift of our inner realms. That means who you are today is not who you are tomorrow, but how can that be? So in the outer realms, existentially your body's just chilling at its own pace, but internally you log in and log out of consciousness, and this has to be noted. I'm that guy in history being like, yo, this is happening, what should we do about it as a species? So, once we understand language and existence like two chemicals have a chemical reaction that changes even both of them, the concept of morality has to retire. So I'm sorry to say that in the future, there is no good and bad. Not that they don't exist as concepts, but that we are no longer judging moments as if like they have one angle of meaning. That means any object, like whoever you are right now, if there's an object like around you, your phone or a pen, paper, whatever's around you right now, just hold that object for a moment and look around. That means rotate the object with your hand and look at all angles of the object, right? You will notice that there is multiple angles to the same form. And we're living in a world of information. That means every design, every geometry of form has multiple angles, endless angles that it can be understood through. Geometry is like the laughter of the gods, and numerology is like the tears of the gods. in a world where we don't need to just find food and shelter and survive. We need to also consume information, because the mind is becoming faster and faster as time goes on. That means, like, imagine I'm like, somebody drives at, okay, let's imagine in history. Let's say in history they make, we look at history and there was the first vehicle had 1 horsepower and was literally a horse. Like, that was the first vehicle in history, non-metaphysically speaking. And so that horse, was a vehicle, and then we built cars with more horsepower. So imagine, as cars began being built, human beings had never gone at those speeds before. Human beings in history had never gone, let's say, 50 kilometers per hour, where now we're all going at that speed and it's normal to us, So imagine right now we have gone as a species 50 miles per hour, but the engine gives us an opportunity to go so much further. It is one of those great challenges of our species. How do we get 8 billion different DNAs that have activated as members of a civilization, working in a way where they, throughout the lifetime, achieve the desires of themselves and the desires of the whole species? That means probably, it may not be obvious, but there is 100% a way where we could look at our world and see everything working out. If we can zoom in on that image and then allow that comparison to the past and the present to be the innovation, I am telling you, we're just exploring the realm. It's as if we're all cameras, biological cameras, And when you become a yogi, when you become a mystic, it becomes very hard to live for the self. It becomes very hard to do that. Why? Because the self is the whole moment. So you reach a point where you've experienced your biological body, you've understood its fascinations, you've experienced your mind, you've understood its fascinations, and that means you've walked in the inner realms and you've experienced that, you've walked in the outer realms and you've experienced that. In the inner realms you don't walk, you pilot his attention. But anyways, so you've experienced both of these, and then you're in this biological body and you're like, what now? What now? I saw the body, I saw the mind, what now? That question comes, witnessing a phoenix at night. What is left is selfless service. That is the ultimate behavior of man. That he is so able to resolve the dimensions of the inner realm of the individual, that the only thing left is a sort of collective being. That means we did things as individuals, and we are individuals, so we experience individual doing and individual being. Now we haven't experienced collective doing and collective being. Right? And those people who go to samadhi, and yogis and Buddhic people, those who have understood the Buddhic nature, so it would be as if they have understood collective being, but we have not seen collective doing. It's the last piece of the puzzle. It's the only thing not done yet, right? Not done so far, that if we do, it would be the fascination. It would be that even if this world had gods watching through the skies, it would in some sense be fascinating to them too. They'd be like, no way, human beings unlock the next level. It would be like global achievement unlocked, like an Xbox notification. Morality would mean multidimensional engagement. Ever since I implemented in this, I have not judged people for, I think it's been like some years now. When I say I haven't judged people, I mean I can't, because there's so many dimensions to the mind that just because we see a person in front of us, we can never know who they are to themselves. Like that's like, the rarity of reality. And relationships emerge when inner realms, they know, not that they match, but that inner realms are aiming the same way. That means we're all our consciousness is like piloting through the space-time continuum, and we want 8 billion pilots to, in some sense, wonder what is the most efficient strategic approach of the human life. It's as if like everything is a puzzle, but eventually you're like, who's solving this puzzle? And that's where divinity manifests. And when I say divinity manifests, it doesn't manifest in the sense of like suddenly miracles happen in the outer realms. The divinity manifests as a communication from behind the scenes of all the beliefs we have ever had on the world. From that behind the scenes, the movement of the moment happens, and we recognize instantly what is us and what is the other. So this is where cultivating honesty, that means familiarizing yourself with states where the simple can access. I am telling you, if there was a volume knob, but instead of it being for volume, it was for the simplicity of humanity, I would right now, the volume is very loud. It's just we need to bring the volume down and simplify all the complexity. You know what it is? It's as if we have let infinity in the room too early, so the species is forgetting nature because technology's allure is endless. By the way, questions are welcome in the chat section. Just communicate it clearly. People can put MW at the front of it, But anyways, so what I'm trying to say, guys, is that new era, we're moving as minds projecting bodies rather than just a body howling a tired brain simulator, a brain, abstract simulator, So what that means is we allow nature. It's, what it is? It's like every person in this life, like some things you have to do, for example, certain things you have to do. But one thing people should not miss out in this life, and it's so easy to access, and it has no fee. It's free. And you know what it is? It is nature. But to go in nature with reverence. And you would say reverence for what? In the context of a god? I'll be like, no. Let go of all your ideas as if you're walking in a jungle you have never been before. As if this moment is new. Those people who access the new, they become observers of their inner realm content. That inner realm content backs them up in their animation as an individual. Because I'll tell you, honor meant you are willing to be so honest with yourself that the physical reality even stay true to that principle. So what I mean by honesty is that it's like an art form. It's hilarious, but I never thought I'd say this, but people have to train honesty. they have to train to be in intense, complex situations where illusion, ignorance, and all this stuff could make the moment easier, and for a moment just be their own internal sensei and be like, okay, abide by the soul of the moment rather than chase the bone of desire. You know, it is easy to become an animal. We all human beings, like I noticed this about human psychology, you know, that people think that, for example, those who do not have a home, their psychologies are like messed up. Now, it could be the case due to multiple reasons, but the dissension process of the psychology had to do, in some sense, with dehumanization. So something is important is, for example, you've seen that scene in movies where the kid's going to prom and the parents come and, the father comes and fixes the son's tie, and he's like, all right, this is an illusion of you growing up, but sure, let's go with, let's go with this, And so it's as if the father comes and, fixes the tie of the son before the son, you can say it from a Western context, runs into a limo, So what it is what is going on in that sense is that the father is checking on the son's state. Do you know? Sorry guys, my attention just went to the view outside of my balcony. But I can say, aside from many lights on, many more lights can be turned on. Intelligence has multiple relationships. I would say we can have 4 types of sentences that explain what is going on in the world. One sentence is, everything is nothing. Ran this as 0. The other sentence, I would say, is that everything is everything, singular. Then I would say everything is dual. What that means is life did not start as a singular source of meaning. It started as 2 types of meaning in combat. What that means is sometimes, this is, I would say, a sort of mixture of my philosophical approach to theology, but how would I say it? If God is in man and man doesn't know, in some sense God is the unknown. God is the metaphor for the totality of all the unknown variables in this world. The mind is not systematic in the sense of it goes from A to B to C to D. It could be that the mind goes to B and suddenly notices up to the letter, E. Do you know what I mean? And then the mind goes right from B to the letter E, but at the same time has a memory route to go from A to B to C. So what I'm saying is that it's just like painting. Using your mind is like painting. using a human intelligence, and it's painting through signals, their expression and their reception. Now, signals can translate for some people to image. That means there's some people on the planet that let's say you have a group of people selected from all around the world in one room, okay? And you tell these people, what do you think, about like an apple or something, whatever. You just ask them, what do they think, you would see like, it would be like all those universes trying to step out of themselves to come to a neutrality where the true question can be asked again and then access, right? So what it is, it's like the mind, it has a throwing effect. When I speak, somebody once told me, well, there's a might behind how I give these talks, and I was like, I don't know if it's might, but it's like throwing something, right? So for me, when I communicate, it's not just how the sound of my voice has a sort of loudness to the neighbors, but in some sense, it's also like my thoughts are being thrown out into the universe. It's like, even though I am saying I'm giving a podcast, I am sending out signals into the sky when I speak. So sometimes, I guess you can't tell who really these talks are for, but I need a breather. Okay, let's go to the chat section. My mind needs a breather. So Lorna says, Mr. Within, I've had moments in my life where I've heard God. I'm sure of it. What is that? That is, first of all, thanks for sharing something personal. But I will say, just to use it, so this is what I perceived when I read your comment, Lorna. That you see, you have had moments where your mind, your inner realm truth, became superior than your outer realm truth. And anytime that happens, call it the channeled state, call it being in trance, call it divinity, activated, whatever you like to call it. It's when you have trusted your inner realms and you are watching it. And if you notice, we human beings, due to our individuality, we need events. Like, people don't want to just show off their paintings. People don't want to show off like they're on social media, just like how they look, pictures of themselves, or like, let's say they're singing, or just like whatever, all the different outlets there are, different ways people are expressing themselves online. It's like people also want to share stories that they lived through. Right? That's why we have this whole motivational movement everywhere, So, what I'm trying to say is that language is a technology where we have maybe used a tiny percent, not a tiny, but we've used maybe like 25% of language max. There's 75% of ways of human communication still just available. Endless ways based on our continuity level, So Lorna, I would respond to your question and say, in your inner realms, I don't disagree with you about your experience. In the outer realms, any person who looks at the concept of God or has that concept existing for them, they have a curiosity about the universal structure. What that means is we still care for truth. That's why we are wondering beyond what we see. If we didn't care for truth, if we didn't care for the progress of the inner realms of humanity, we'd be like, yeah, it's whatever you find in front of you, that's true, But our questions in our mind allows us to, in some sense, raise our sword of intellect into the sky and request from, the unknown divine, its assistance, And there was a picture I shared in one of these talks, like 1602, where there's like the artist drew this amazing picture of this person with a sword kind of made with these honorable flames, and phoenixes from the sky flying towards the earth. And when I say I don't see it as phoenixes, I see that consciousness's emergence is equivalent to if a meteor hit Earth. A person being born on Earth is equivalent to a meteor hitting Earth. It is something where from the unknown, something that did not exist now exists. You are in that existence, active as the pilot of the elemental view. You see, people in their inner realms, they can attain supreme archetypes. What that means is a God archetype is something that leads you towards absolute being in the inner realms. In the inner realms, I can tell you, I am the universe speaking to you right now. But in the outer realms, I am embodied individual with this name and form, existing in a society considered. So I'm just saying, it's like more than we think. The world is one room. We realize reality is one room of a giant, endlessly expanding mansion, which at some point, at least physically, we consider the world, the universe, scientifically at least, the universe is going to have a heat death. It's another way of saying the universe overheats, like as a mindless engine, and then it just resets. Language is one, if I was to redesign the educational system, I would say language studies. Language would be, I would say, the mother of knowledge. Or I would say it this way. I would say nature studies would be the mother of knowledge, and the father of knowledge would be language. And rather than see it as a tree with branches, we start animating it through the human relationship. Do you know that poet from ancient Greece, Hesiod, or Hesiod, I think? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I don't remember it accurately, but Greek mythology is the work of this great poet, okay? And you can say a poet is a world creator, if they're honest. If they're dishonest, they are they are fiction afraid of itself. Let me tell you, life in dimensions where there's no personality has no judgment, and it's just event oriented. You see, people, instead of thinking that they are talking to God, should realize that they are a moment where this idea, this experience is present in. That means until 2011, I would say, I was identifying as just the idea the environment gave me. What that means is I find it's a similar experience for many human beings on this planet, where children are born in a world they are not prepared for, and some problems in the world, like they never existed even before to even be prepared for. So we are finding ourselves in a jungle, even though it may be painted with convenience. But in this jungle, the response has been to just go into the jungle and Spartan it out and learn from life's, wilderness. But at some point, we have to consider our energy levels and what we can do with our energy levels as a human being. Because resources determine your energy. Your energy determines your motivation. It's like a hungry man chasing dreams of luxury. You know what it means? That means it's a denial of the current reality. So man has to embrace his simplicity, and once he does, all that is left is complexity. So the moment you accept that, accept all your negative karma in this realm, you just accept whatever it is. That means you not just in this, there was a philosopher, I don't know if it was a philosopher, but some wise person said this thing that we exist in two worlds, and these two worlds are one where it's the world where we're born, and then there's our dash to the grave on our gravestone. So there is that world, and then there's a world that was here before us, and there's a world here that will be after us. Do you know? So what that means is, like, I was, for example, born in 1991, and before that, I was oblivious. Like, I didn't even care about the past because it wasn't real to me, you know? But as one accesses and activates their mind, a testament to knowledge is the comprehension of the past, of how far we as some sort of intelligent movement have come, you know? There is a very unique thing. Like, I'm telling you, people think there's normality exists. Normality is the biggest hoax. Why? Because the world is strangely changing all the time. You know, it's like, what normality? You know? It's as if we have ignored truth because we didn't know how to contemplate it, but the advanced communicators have arrived. We have reached an era in history where I got surprised, you know, that so many parents for the first time in history are homeschooling their kids. And I was like, whoa, why is this happening? And then I realized, because the system has let us down. What that means is, it's like, have you heard that thing? It's like when you want to get something done, you know, tell a man, you know, if you don't want anything done at all, tell a cat, you know. Everything will update. What I'm saying is not a philosophy, is not a teaching. I'm just saying, when we look at the nature of reality, we have a direct experiential relationship with this life. The moment you remember your direct experiential life with nature, a strange wilderness will find your inner realm. So I would say the way a person's imagination evolves in this world is through a sort of direct experience in the outer realms, where the inner realms move automatically, right? Because there was a time when I was younger where I remember, ever since considering myself as a thought, I was always trying to think. I'm like, okay, how do people think? Like, what is the right way of thinking? Do you know? But then you realize everybody stands as their own thought in accordance to their DNA and perception. And so even if we are a thought that nobody else ever sees. You know, it is in the privacy of our mind. You know, I consider my mind as a giant art gallery, and when I give these talks, I I'm just, explaining the images. Because it is rhythmic, and it is stream-like, and it's instantaneously accessible the moment the self-defeat of the ego design from the past stops. So what I mean by this is that you gotta let go of yourself, but not in the outer realms. That means not like you gotta just go to India and find a cave and meditate. Not let go of your outer realms, but you gotta be able to let go of your inner realms. That means to allow your eyes to update in accordance to a universal space. We are universal beings. Who are we kidding? You know, we're just like primitive cultures would put paint on their face. You know what we're doing now? We're putting language on our face. We're saying, I'm from this part of the land. You know, we're on a freaking sphere. You know, it's like, who had the balls to create walls on a sphere? You know? So it is in some sense ideologically broken. right? It's as if it's one cake, but it's like who cut it into pieces, and we see it is time. So time is not our enemy, but we don't know if we can consider it an ally. Only with the true awareness of our mind and our true intelligence. That means even forget the word body, mind, soul, spirit, God, forget all these words and just look at what you are directly, experientially, in a way where if you had to figure it out alone and instantaneously, how would that look like? And your own vision of your potential will fascinate you to pursue it. You want inspiration? I will tell you the world is like, hey man, look around. And we do the best we can because that's how much our energy allows. Sometimes I think speaking is an art form in the sense that machines can't do it. Machines can repeat, they can create the illusion of a communicator, but nothing will ever be as natural as the human species who wielded sound like a god. Like the god within the animal. I wrote an essay actually called that, and I'm going to read it for you right now. Hang in there, guys. The book I wrote was called The Source of Language. It was a series on essays on my observation as a human being on what the source of language is. There we go. So keep in mind I wrote this in 2015. There we go. The God within the animal. I think I might have read this in other episodes, but I think it'll be perfect for this one. And an update to members of the channel, there's a library coming soon, an online library. And I'll give an episode on that project, Mr.Within's library, pretty much. But anyways. The God within the animal. You can say written by MW1609. It can be said the body is an animal, your mind is God, or rather your body is made of earth and your mind is made of sky. Therefore all communication can be said to be the communication and movement between the earth and sky, the body and mind, and the animal and God. Eastern mysticism shines upon the view of the world that it is an unspeakable organism beyond the description of its parts. What that means is that from the shadows you cannot discover the true nature of the sun. Let us find the enlightenment that is quicker than light. For if you were an artist that wanted to draw your greatest memory of existence on a canvas ready for visual paint, how the world happens is quite the most beautiful thing. Many think life is about its length, but it is about its depth. The depth of life experience is a suggestion that when you wonder what is the best way to live life, it will be said you can get lost in a game of duality, which is the unhidden world that language walks on. Or you can liberate yourself from how if you were to think beyond thought, there would be no thinker. Suddenly, the words of language have finally found themselves transparent to the world of direct experience. How you acknowledge this moment is important because every idea that you have on your moment will create an unconscious cycle of karma. In other words, language and art for the conscious self-aware being can no longer be separate. How the moment must be acknowledged is that when you ask, who is asking, in quotations, who is the seer of thought, in quotations, how is, in quotations, there, also in quotations here. The source of language is always beyond what the language is. As Mr. Within, I've given a shout out to the podcast. As Mr. Within has said, the letters of the alphabet are not enough. This universe is not a tangible fixed concept or idea, and it will never be. For as long as we have imagination, science cannot have the loudest voice. A self-reflective, divine direct experience will suddenly, through the gates of silence and stillness, very intensely tear up egotistical conclusions about reality in a presence in which if you looked in your morning mirror, you would not see yourself as separate from the universe, but as the whole universe, as one moment of absolute being. Are the letters in the alphabet enough? Enlightenment is stepping out of time through a self-reflection beyond time. No two people would be one person, for there would just be one person. When you flow with your true nature, that is the whole moment, you don't connect too many ideologies to self. For self is your pure moment, always as it was. There is no supreme idea of a hierarchical intelligence with anger issues. The God of the heart is the best God, for it beats as the center of the breathable universe. Behind the eyes of ideas, there is no third eye of an enlightened master. There is the beauty of a moment that is its own mirror. Polished by nature, where all divinities work. If you look closely at these letters, you will see they are artwork. For abstraction is only pushed back by society's reality, for language was the smudge and direct experience is the glory wiping the mirror of vision. The mind, conceptually, is void, but rich with subjective design. Has a thought taken off its mask? Has your solar presence realized it was never an individual soul and the teacup had to be empty before it's full? Can Zen masters break dance? You know, there's a space between the word breakdance. Are words fighting back? The mystery of conception always points to an axis, unconsciously thrown into the endless abyss of the unknown. Is your personality an unnecessary scene for your true presence? What has the Buddha said that we have not listened to? Whose story is history? Transcendence means direct experience is all that is happening. Beyond planes of action, the wise man listens to the self beyond words, in which sincerity has made too humble to hurt a dying world. How do the eternal behave towards temporal rudeness? Don't stay thirsty, my friends. Just walk omnisciently as your true nature. Imagination and technology are the horses if logic, rationality, and divine intuitive intelligence are the chariot. Now wonder, dear reader, who is sitting in this grand picture that is the chariot of the moment? What is the texture of your experience? Or have you not playfully discovered the oneness of love yet? For in selfless devotional service, like the tree outside to our moment, we shall live without prior karmic disturbances boomeranged from insincere moments of unnecessary actions of thoughts. A smart man looks in front of him. A wise man is the whole moment that sees. Beyond ordinary perception, just like the stars promised, we are extraordinary. Creativity means to continue. Creativity means on the surface. Okay, let me change this on. Okay. was I? Creativity means on the surface of the rock there are flows of communicating intelligence, as if our consciousness was a drop of intelligence. It is rather present through a river of multidimensional intelligence, so beyond the conception of ideology that with a simple awareness to what is within us, we have not only become the source of language, but the source of all light. There are two ways to look at our world in regards to a multidimensional context. Either we are within another world, or another world is within us. It seems the cosmic fractal and nature of the body never stop growing. Wisdom originates from self-reflection. Trust the moment and let the divine smile. You are the whole life, not a part of it. You are not a spinning rock in the middle of nowhere. You, in caps, are your moment. Beyond these words, you are your own enlightenment. We must conduct our consciousness with the full awareness of our whole moment, regardless of how multidimensional or not it would be. The pilots of consciousness are here to navigate as the whole moment of existence. Excuse me. That includes enlightenment too. How much do you trust the intelligence that you are beyond language? How does Pegasus fly and ride the floating fields of paradise at the same time? Perhaps if you stop thinking that you are a thought that gets wounded by disassociation, realize you're not a thought and you never were. You're a moment of existential experience, untouchable by all that is. For it is defined based and by all of it. My beloved friend, you are your own torchbearer. God is already its own exploration. If you only think you are a creator, in bracket self, you will build blindly. Be your moment. There's nothing simpler than that. Are you reading this book or self-reflectively observing how the nature of your mind emanates into reality? Be sincere, and the seer of all sin is beyond sin. You are the path. There is nothing else. And that's the end of the essay from The Source of Language, which is an unpublished manuscript. The world is a giant movement. There is no good and bad to it, it's just something that's happening. If it can be updated, if our minds can be used to make the outer realms a way more efficient and healthy and playful realm of advancement. Right now, I would say we are in the medieval ages. Just to give a comment on modern culture, we are in the medieval ages of stand-up comedy. For example, when I watch these stand-up comedy YouTube videos that are popular, what I see is that people are finding humor in misery. Now that's a medieval phase. The next phase of it would be the supernova explosion that the greatest marketing in any field is to stay true to the meaning of the realm, which means knowledge is going to become not a catalyst, but it's going to boost everything. So what that means is all those, let's say manipulative marketers and culture, they would in some sense be like, yo, what are we doing? People just honestly need to hear what the product is and what it can do for them. And companies nowadays, successful companies, those that are in lists and whatever, these companies should act like the enlightened beings in front of all the other corporate systems, in front of all the other companies. That means we need leadership in the business realm, right? But not as an individual, but as units, right? So it's as if, I would say a great business runs like a Star Trek ship, that means, I don't know, I see in reality different approaches, but I would say when I say we're all pilots, I am also honoring and tributing what Buckminster Fuller and Marshall McLuhan said. you know, that we are on spaceship Earth. You know, call it whatever you like. You know, some people who are, let's say, more of the Mechanian mindset, you know, they in some sense see that we are inside a universe that is endlessly, infinitely moving towards complexity. That means even if I didn't give these talks, civilization would advance. You know, I would think others would arrive, right? Because it's ultimately when we think generally about things, that means you're becoming a giant, right? So what that means is the way I perceive the concept of, let's say, deduction and induction, right? Deduction, you're looking at something and you are in some sense in the attempt to simplify from the, how would I say it? You look at something general and you make a specific conclusion, you know, and induction would be in some sense, so deduction is like you're looking at something as a giant, and induction is as if you're looking at something like a small person standing beside like the giant, you know. The dance from the general to the specific happens in all fields. And honestly, what can be said, we have created a society, that, at least this is my view, that we have created a world in 2021 where people are tired of belief. And what that means is they are tired of concentration, right? And when I say concentration, I mean, like, what else can happen? Either 8 billion creatures go ballistic and they all freak out and they act wild till the end of time, or at some point in history they'll be like, okay, let's attempt the the most complex, the most advanced, let's see what it would be like if we maxed out the engine of human creativity, of humanity's creativity. We are a creative force, you know. We are like, and the coolest thing about life right now, and I'm saying this to all those people in the academic realm, the coolest thing about life right now, and only a philosopher can tell you this, you know, is that it is unknown. So much, we still don't know what we are, right? And it's hidden in theories. So many theories are acting as facts, and we don't. They're acting as facts in disguise, you know. And so there's this whole crucial aim to not only objectively enlighten ourselves by accepting the design and nature of the outer realms, but to also subjectively enlighten ourselves in finding a comfort, as if our mind was our greatest guide or our greatest future self. It is compassionately standing beside you, you know, with an aim of advancement, you know. Because a being can hop from, civilization to civilization, endlessly singing the song of advanced civilizations, but I will tell you, the world makes its own choices. You know, divinity is not a concept, which means truth. It has no shape. So how many human beings on this planet even care about a shapeless truth? You know, when that changes, we will know, you know, that raindrop on the windshield of this wallpaper won't appear as like the tear of sorrow of, you know, this girl who's being driven to the future. One of the most incredible quotes that finds us from Eastern culture, and it is from Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi. He says, I have lived on the lip of insanity, on the edge of, he means on the edge of insanity. Wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I have been knocking from the inside. And so that is the revelation of the mind. It is not something special, it is just a remembrance of what we all are before we do anything. You know, to be religious is an alien would come and be like, oh my god, this human being is religious, that human being is secular, that human being is a futurist, that human being is lost in the past, you know, to themselves, and the aliens would laugh. Aliens would be like, human beings are putting boxes on their head and freaking out about and suffering because of it, you know? So right now, civilization's inner ability is maybe, if I'm being honest, 0.2% active. That means we haven't engaged beyond dualism. Because if we did, it would be the breaking of the present archetype. That means sometimes when you think about really the far future, let's say you were a person who you're like, okay, I have a mind, I have the sense of time, so let me see how far can I envision from this exact moment how things will go forth. And you go towards a realistic level of it, but then once you get at the edge of your realism, you come to the language threshold. When you come to the language threshold in your inner space, the moment's reality is far supreme than its content. So you are eternal energy at that point, simultaneously being the attention as the whole moment. So what it is we are, you know, a formless attention, and a form is found in this attention, and our relationship established in regards to the glow of our mind. The outer ones. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Let me see what else I can say about this episode before I end it off. So when language and existence change each other's meaning, and the abstraction of morality is just how language is a dualistic system, and we're using it to pinpoint truth in the void where there's an infinite change somehow in it. You know, it's like everything's empty, but it's changing somehow. You know, it's like, talk about a normal universe. Right? So we don't know how things are changing. Our free will gives us a certain reasonable ability to figure out how much of it we are in control. Like right now, I am in control of my voice box. I'm in control of my biological existence as a being. Right? But the dismissal of who I am in this world, and when that time comes for the transition of my consciousness, it all depends on the world. At the end of the day, I'm some person who has this view that in order to give freedom, we should not impinge upon it. That means anybody who believes in the concept of freedom, if you impinge on another's freedom, that in some sense destroys your own self-belief of freedom. But reality is the strange system where 8 billion beings are in a crowded room, and eventually there will be collisions, right? So that's when it becomes necessary through a multidimensional framework on the meaning of life to pilot through different angles. What that means is nobody can be judged, because there's always more ways to look at it. Do you know these talks I'm giving? Right now, I don't know how the future is going to walk, but like right now there's 4 viewers and 1 like, okay, you know, and that's in my, when I look at these talks, I am like, okay, I am giving a signal out in the realm, and before I have to say any story about it, what does it attract? Do you know, it's like, what is coming to these words, right? So in some sense, the audience is a testament to how far the language echoed in the inner realm of the other, you know, in the listener, right? And the whole point of me giving these talks is not to say, yo, it's what I'm saying. It's the whole point of it is to say, rare opportunity of human life. Every person should become, you know, the prodigy and the master of the instrument of their mind, right? And that is a healthy egoic desire, because the issue with ego is that because the ego is blind to the present reality, it in some sense becomes cruel, bad, karma doesn't work out, desire, and all this. But when the ego is gone and then the moment is being watched, karma doesn't apply. You know why? Because if we're projecting the meaning in the world and you stop projecting meaning dualistically, there is nothing to do anything. So you can become established in the presence of your life force as the watcher, you know. And this is where you'd see why I chose the name Mr.Within, because who we are and how we consider we're being a person is that light is entering our eyes and the brain is like breakdancing, you know, like a thunderstorm. You know, imagine like, you know, in the heavens the gods were breakdancing, and that's what a thunderstorm was, you know, their feet hitting the clouds, you know. But the brain is producing content for itself. And as we evolve beyond this, this is where civility comes in, right? This is why I'm saying, oh my God, the Dalai Lama was so right when he's talked about compassion. Because compassion is the atmosphere where the future generations will have access to a life still gentle enough for them to pilot intelligently into the social construct. Right? It's gentleness, you know. Gentleness has to be preserved, right? I even saw society in the future kind of being designed in having sectors, right? So what I mean by that is like there's going to be a sector of society, the center of it probably, where we would say that is like the sober state. And then there's going to be a sector of society in the middle where these are those kind of in between, and then keep going further, 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 and it becomes a circular restructuring of reality, right? And at the same time, we have to be like, we can't just get rid of all these skyscrapers we've made on the surface of the earth. This is why suddenly we start creating sky cities. But how do you create a sky city with a building having a foundation, right? And there's so many approaches where one angle is put a giant magnet above the city. You know, I mean, that's this is very arbitrary, and I'm talking about 600 years of progress, and then maybe they will attempt this properly, right? But what it is just to fathom all the infrastructure lift up into the sky somehow. I don't know how, but I know that the legend of the castle in the sky is true, you know. And you know, as a pilot, I'll testify. But so what I'm saying is that it would be a sort of getting rid of everything and then in a circular fashion structuring it. Or even it could totally be just us fathoming, like overlaying in our minds circular zones. But the whole idea is that we take the same multidimensional approach as, you know, our minds are doing literally. Right, so our minds are like a multidimensional phenomenon. You're aware of your body, you're aware of the space around you, you're aware of the sounds that come, you know, you're aware of the movements that take place, you know, you're aware of even the temperature, you're aware of your organs, you know, your whole body functioning as an organism. So these are all things the person is aware of. And then after you're content with all these, you know, basic kind of views on basic modes of reality, then you come to wondering truly who the witness is, and that's when the like spiritualism has any sort of meaning. So when you come to that attention, that presence, it is that road to simplicity. Language and existence become simultaneously witnessed. That means duality is being watched by emptiness. So duality, it can't be real. So right and wrong are just subjective positions. Not that there is no right and wrong. You know, society has laws, and that's people don't respect the law in some places. But I'll tell you, and of course, there is corrupt, you know, human beings. Their efficiency levels are different, regardless of the positions they have in a hierarchy. The parts of the hierarchy they hold, right? But I see like. just perceive an incredible evolution where every person not only has found a contentment, that means we know a known world and we know a known self, and usually people on earth right now are content with this. But I would say for the advanced communicator has another two quadrants to fulfill. And what I mean by that is, like, after you have gotten to know your known self, and you have gotten to know the known world, then you look at the known self and you're like, how can I have a known self without an unknown self? This is another way of saying, how can we have the concept of temporality without the reference point of eternity? It's as if language is a very small part of life, but it is a very important part of life, because from that small part of life, we capture the world in our understanding. And understanding, like, it's literally like we're standing under an unknown universe. I mean, what are we going to do about it, they show in films, in some, like, media that, there was this kid and he was, like, being seen to be bullied, and the bully pushes the kid and says, what are you going to do about it? Something like that, right? And I can always feel like the forces of nature and the universe and just the miraculous or the potential of humanity is literally, time is bullying us. Time is like, you're going to exit at some point, what are you going to do about it? And we as human beings are like, okay, we're going to build something probably, and so we go forth. And I would officially declare, at least, that I'm a human being where I don't exist in language. Like, I have the knowing of that. I exist biologically, but the concepts I'm saying, they're not tangible. That means you can hear my voice, but you can't touch the thought before I shared it. And what saw the thought and then decided to share. That's how we, find a way to, chart the terra incognita of the inner ones. The inner terra. The inner earth. The inner earth is like, our emotions change it, You can say, like, honestly, when I look at the future, I'm like, how are 8 billion creatures gonna manage their emotions to even build an advanced civilization? Like, I honestly wonder about that. But then I know that fascination, like, if an alien landed down on Earth, people would be fascinated, right? Everybody would watch that news, right? Why? Because it is the unknown. It is something that has entered the known universe of man from the unknown sky, right? So, if we get fascinated by, let's say, we see it in movies even, like aliens landing down on Earth, right? So, it's the same with a vision and an idea in the emptiness of this world. That means it's so weird. It's as if, you know what it is? It's as if the universe is not geometrically made for us. This is why we're experiencing a temporary consequence. There's a book I'll be giving out soon. It's called God Likes Spheres. In that I'll go deeper into this. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Please consider becoming a member until episode 1620. I will be having the things live to the public. Then after that, it's like a samurai, I will honor the channel model. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And in the era of living as a mind, we must care for the inner lives of people and be experientially sensitive in the sense that there was this saying, everybody's fighting a battle you cannot see, and that battle that they're fighting is in their own view of the world, which has a value because nobody, we each have different DNA. Like how, I don't know how many times I need to emphasize this in these talks, that nobody is the same to even be compared, to even be judged. Do you understand? Infinity cannot have emotional individuality. An infinite force. That means we haven't understood ourselves as energy, right? We understand ourselves as a user of energy, or a vehicle, or some storage, drive of energy, right? But I will tell you, when we realize we are, right now we're in the drop, if I could use a natural metaphor, we're in the drop phase of reality. That means the drop is real. That means individualism is God right now. But then we will go to the river phase, where it's not individualism, it's dynamism, collective dynamism, that will become our God. In some sense, there will be a phase, maybe, I don't know how long, but human beings will go through that phase. So beyond individualism being God, and beyond collectivism being God, we reach a point where there is no concept, and truth is here before we were. And I don't know, human beings can choose to pilot and function as advanced communicators in this realm, or they could choose to play costume games of language, and the belief wars unnecessarily continue. So the final words for this talk to all listeners: are we ready to see the greatest thing we can do here? Are we ready for that? That means, imagine if somebody came and said, tomorrow we can build an advanced civilization. How many people would be like, but that seems impossible, but I'd like to see it. I mean, it's like there seems to be a conviction, you see? So I'm telling you, it's the same. In all that I've said in this episode, we are beyond language games. So the mystery and new spirituality will find the world. It's not even spirituality, I would say. It is like human beings realize we were all polymaths from the beginning, but it just needs to be remembered. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. The mind is an endlessly changing phenomenon. So as Plato says, time is the moving image of eternity. We are eternity experiencing time. We're eternity moving in time. The other side of the dualism of even the concept of time. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Much blessings and namaste.